Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch. I am your host, the real underscore G Warner, recently reinstated on Twitter. To make a long story short, someone reported me for counterfeiting. Don't really understand how that happened. And Twitter support is absolutely useless and did not respond to, 15 emails over 3 days. Finally, I deleted the tweets, which of course I had to admit my own guilt or something like that in order to do it. But Elon Musk, really great job running your company. I strongly dislike everyone at Twitter at this point and hope that the stock goes to zero. With that said, thank you if you're watching on there. Also, thank you for listening on Apple Podcasts. Please rate, review, 5 stars, all that sort of stuff if you can. If you like what you're hearing, which I think you are, because I get a lot of new followers despite not tweeting for the last 4 days. Clearly it was not intentional. I guess my backup is at the pitch betting, because betting the pitch was taken, of course. But that is a Twitter account that I'm going to use, I guess, if this thing happens again. Hopefully it doesn't, because it was brutal. If you're on YouTube, thanks again, of course. If you're listening on there, I appreciate it. If you could, or watching, if you could throw me a subscribe, like, 5-star review, or just a comment. Probably review is probably not, whatever. It's late. I promise I'd get a match day 3 out tonight. I'm going to do part 1 of match day 3. Still kind of trying to get through what just happened today. And without further ado, all lines quoted on this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag. It's my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description below to fund your account and use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. Get in there, go use the bonus, and let's go win some money at BetOnline. With that said, I'm going to go through the World Cup match day 3, part 1. So it's the first 2 days of the knockout, or excuse me, of the simultaneous games. Knockouts are coming soon. I don't want to jump too far ahead because we don't know who's there just yet. I will say my theme for this and the next match day 3 episode are to not bet teams that have to play differently than they want to. So Leopards don't really change their spots, but there's a lot of teams that want to play defensive that now have to go for it. And that is a dangerous situation. But I'm going to come up with an ultimate best bet for the first 2 days of match day 3. And then I will come back and probably either do the second half of match day 3 either tomorrow night or the next night, because I am exhausted. I don't think I got an hour of podcasting in me at 12:38 Central Time in the morning of Tuesday, November 29th. So here we go. Netherlands and Qatar. Netherlands on the road at Qatar are 2-goal favorite. Not enough points just yet to say that Netherlands have clinched the first seed, and I think it's really important that they do so. Pulling up the World Cup standings just so I don't mess any of that up. And so honestly, at this point, I did a podcast earlier for pregame with Mackenzie Rivers, and he asked me what is the meaning of winning these groups, and it's essential to win your group because you face a second place or a runner-up in another group. It's possible that the top team in that league might finish second, but ultimately you're doing yourself a huge service trying to avoid the biggest teams out there. So, and the odds are back. This makes a little more sense in this hour, but anyway, here we go. So Netherlands on 4 points, Ecuador on 4 points. So yeah, so Netherlands not close to clinched here. Ecuador and Senegal both play, and if they both draw, they can get to 4 and 5 points, irrespectively. Qatar are the only team that's eliminated, but they are the home team, and ultimately, who knows what Qatar are going to ultimately offer. But they are probably the worst team in this entire competition, so that's great for Netherlands. However, they're a 2-goal favorite. And what that tells me, though, is they're going to be playing everybody and they're going to go all out. And Qatar have not really looked like a team that can sustain any sort of offense and really just look like a team that's ripe for the picking. So I have no interest in backing Qatar, even a huge price at home. I also don't really believe in their home crowd advantage really whatsoever. They clearly just bought their way into a World Cup and really screwed another team out of being in this competition, and potentially my attendance, because wasn't going to make a flight to Qatar, especially with all the drama that's going on in that country. Over under is 3, which has fallen down from 3.25 from the podcast I did earlier tonight. I'm not really a believer in really anything here. I guess over 3, if anything. Ecuador and Senegal is that's definitely a match I want to pick on. So Ecuador on 4 points, Senegal on 3. Goal differential is the first tiebreaker here. And that's a big deal because if Senegal get a draw, they get to 4 points. If Netherlands lose by 1 goal, they will still be 1 ahead in goal differential. So Senegal essentially have to go for this. And I think that kind of fits this scenario pretty well. But when you look at the line, it doesn't really match. Ecuador currently a quarter goal favorite. All the juice on Senegal right now. But Ecuador are ahead in points. They played really well in this tournament, but they're a defensive-minded team that now just get to play even more defense. The hard part for Ecuador there is that they are going to sit back probably and be as defensive as possible. And if they concede, then they're going to have to completely turn around their game plan. It's really hard to wake up a sleeping offense when you haven't really been trying all day. Certainly their counterattacks will be valuable and dangerous, potentially lethal. That's what got them to this tournament. The odds are back. Here we go. No one really expected. I mean, Ecuadorians, I think, did, but I don't think Ecuador was expected to be a team that would make this tournament. The CONMEBOL South American qualifying is the toughest in the world, and I think Chile potentially, but definitely Colombia was expected to get to the World Cup ahead of Ecuador. So awesome to Ecuador to get here in general, and then also for how they played so far. With that said, I am interested in going the other way. Oh my God, here we go. Just okay. My other work computer is just a joke right now, but anyway, there we go. 8-0 run for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So Ecuador currently a quarter goal favorite. I like Senegal because they're going to have to be offensive. I am a little bit worried about them overextending themselves, seeking a goal, but I think they're going to be in great position to have a ton of possession and to certainly do as much as they could to put as much pressure on Ecuador. And if this game finishes 0-0, Ecuador celebrating while Senegal cover the spread, as Ecuador would move on to the knockouts and Senegal most likely would not. I also like under 2 here, which is, I mean, getting odds right now and getting a pretty high amount of odds. So maybe under 2.25 is what we'll end up seeing. But that's definitely interested in me right now. Yeah, under 2.25 is very juiced. So Senegal and +0.25 and Senegal under whatever the closing line looks like are my strongest leans in that window. Next, I'll move to the biggest window of all Americans watching, but I'll start with Wales and England. Currently, Wales a 1.25 goal underdog with a ton of juice. Maybe this falls to 1, but I feel like it probably will not based on the amount of English money that hits this market. Over under is 2.5, and I'm also kind of conflicted on where that's going to go as well. So Wales need a really big win. They're sitting on 1 point right now, bottom of Group B. There is a possibility that they can get in. England on 4, Iran 3, USA 2. And Wales, as I just said, on 1. It's possible for this to work out, but it's going to be hard to make that happen. And I'm not exactly sure how they can make that happen because Wales have had really no offense besides a ridiculous penalty conceded by the U.S., I guess, most trustworthy central defender, or at least one of the most guaranteed playing time, which is not a great sign for the U.S. in general. But England, on the other hand, they were very conservative in their match with the U.S. Got a point that I think they probably thought they could pretty much clinch their spot in the next round in the knockouts if they had gotten that point. They were successful in that, but they didn't look good, and I feel like the U.S. outplayed them for a lot of that game. So that's concerning a little bit to me on what the ceiling for England will be, or just really what the floor might be, because they are certainly right for the picking. I don't know that Wales are necessarily the team to do that, because the Welsh want to sit back and defend and counterattack, and they have to win by such a margin to even have a chance to get through that. Unless they're trying to play spoilers of England, I don't think this is a great scenario, because like I said, leading into this podcast after the Twitter rant, is I don't want to play teams that are playing differently than their makeup or how they want to play. And that's definitely how Wales enter this matchup, having to completely change their status, use Aaron Ramsey, who had a really good season so far for Nice, I feel like, but it's done nothing in this tournament. And then Gareth Bale has made a penalty kick that he earned, but ultimately it was just a bonehead mistake by a young American defender that plays in a lower tier MLS team. I mean, it's hard for me to pick out who I want to back in this one. I mean, lean to Wales because they need to perform here and they need a big win. So like a 1-goal loss to cover the spread is far, far away from where they want to be. But I just don't know that that's a scenario where I want a team playing differently than they want to, or how they prepared for this entire tournament. It makes me lean under 2.5 because I just don't know how many goals are going to be scored by Wales. Man, late night podcasts. I clearly need to go to sleep. It's almost 1 a.m. Anyway, next I'll move to a match I'm really interested in, and as is everyone in America that's into soccer that is breathing. Iran currently a half a goal underdog right now. Is the most reasonable number. I think also totals fluctuating between 2 and 2.25. I like Iran. I like under. Iran have pretty much entered this tournament and they're going to play as defensively as possible. It got ugly against England, I think, because they had to extend. And I think that taught them that they're just not capable of doing that against better teams, which everyone in this group is. I think that the huge win over Wales completely turned the group from what was expected to be US or Wales going through to now Iran, if status quo holds. If they get a draw, they're in the next round. That would be a huge upset based on what expectations were. I think most recently after match day 1, and certainly was unexpected after the group was announced, or I guess when Wales qualified through the playoff. But I mean, the United States, unfortunately, have not shown they can score goals in any competition unless even in the CONCACAF, which is to me one of the worst qualifying regions besides like Oceania and that might be the worst. It's hard to say. Africa is a lot stronger from top to bottom, I think, than at least once you get through. Well, that's tough argument and probably not worth it on this World Cup podcast. But anyway, the U.S. really struggled with bad teams to win handily, and Iran are better than that. They're one of the best teams in Asia, and while they started off the group really poorly, it was against the best team in the group. Maybe that was just kind of how the first match went. There's a lot of emotions flying around, certainly with all the protests and what's going on in Iran. And Masra, I think is her name. I don't want to mess that up. Anyway, it's so this is a scenario where unfortunately, the U.S. are expected to win this match, and I don't know. I mean, they always were going to be. It's Masa Amini. Excuse me. Don't forget her name. But the U.S. have not been able to score goals for a really long time, and now they have to do it with all the pressure on. They're still a really young team, one of the youngest in the competition, and I don't know where you can trust goals to come from. Unfortunately, Jesus Ferreira, I'm guessing, going to start as they continuously try new strikers, though. I think Christian Pulisic as a false 9, or really Gio Reyna as a false 9, might be the best decision. I just don't think he's really available because he's made of glass essentially at this point. He's young, but he's not been able to stay healthy for Dortmund whatsoever. And even if he was technically healthy, he's been on a pitch count, as you'd see in baseball, or even now on running back reps in the National Football League. Unfortunately, he just hasn't really been available, and he's been more than needed. So I think they would have used him in match day 1 against Wales once the match was tied, if they could have, but didn't, or preferred not to. It seems like a weird scenario, and I think there's going to be more that comes out after this tournament about his health. With that said, the United States have to break down Iran. They're going to sit 11 men behind the ball, and then they do have a really good counterattack with MD3, who I think is the most accomplished scorer by far in this game. The U.S. has more talent and I think higher transfer market values because of the youth and what their players could turn into. But MD3 is the best player on this pitch, in my opinion. And his team can use a draw, will win a full bet that benefits them. That's how they want to play already. It matches their style. And I just don't think there's going to be a lot of goals in this one. Certainly the match changes if the U.S. goes ahead early. Iran then has to open up, and we could see a lopsided score like we did in the England-Iran opening day matchup. But I've seen nothing from the U.S. that makes me think they will at least open the scoring early. So I feel like an Iran and an underplay, Iran plus 1/2 and +2 or +2.25. I think that is a really nice way to potentially win both. To likely win one, and I think losing both of them is a pretty rare scenario, pretty unlikely. We'll move now to the next set of matches, and that is Australia against Denmark, which I guess is leading us off, though that doesn't seem to be in alphabetical order, of course. So Group D goes before Group C. Not going to guess why that is, but read off the points. France on 6, Australia on 3, Denmark on 1, and Tunisia on 1. This is not how it was expected to go. Denmark was supposed to, I thought they were going to challenge and potentially win the group, but a late concession to Kylian Mbappe's thigh ended up putting them in this position where they are tied for last in the group and are in real big trouble, honestly, at this point. They got to go beat Australia. The nice part is they're a 1-goal favorite with a lot of juice right now. Maybe potentially climbing to 1.25. And based on the reputations, I think that makes sense for these teams. But the Denmark offense has been really non-existent. There was a really bad miss by Cornelius in the opener from point blank range, but it was a little bit hard for an adjustment for him to make, and he hit the post with a header with no one in the goal in front of him. And that was the best chance so far, besides a set piece flick on that fell to Christensen for a goal. That was to equalize against France, and they conceded one later, even though they should have been. I think they were going for the win to try to win the group, and what that ended up doing is costing them a point because they kind of fell asleep back post. Mbappe, who had already scored before, got a next one. And I feel like if you're ever going to pay attention to someone, it's the best player in the world. But who am I? I'm not a soccer manager at this point. I feel like I could be. But anyway, Denmark are a 1-goal favorite. Over-under is 2.5. And there's a lot of pressure on Denmark to win this match. They've certainly looked good enough in this tournament to be there and to do that. I think Australia are going to play as defensively as possible. Even if they fall behind 1-0, I think they would still play very defensively. That's hard to guarantee, though, I must say. I think it really depends on when Denmark scores his first goal. It's really nice to have the 1 goal of insurance because a 1-0 loss will cover the under and will also return your money on Australia right now, potentially even win some when it climbs to 1.25. I just don't like what I've seen from Denmark's offense so far. That's always been a question about them. I think their defense has been solid, but ultimately shutting out goalless with Tunisia, it's a lot less impressive to keep a clean sheet when you don't score yourself. And then the 2 real breakdowns against France, they weren't huge mistakes, but ultimately they got knifed by a really good team, and potentially that is not likely to happen from Australia because I don't think they have any sort of attackers. The flick on header to beat Tunisia was awesome, but it's not something that I would expect to happen again. So strongest lean here is to under 2.5, but also I do like Australia a little bit at +1. I do think Denmark can win this matchup, and they probably should. But there's nothing that I've seen from an offense so far that makes me scared of that under 2.5 failing, because I don't think Australia will contribute to the score at all. Next we'll go, it's still in this group, is Tunisia and France. Currently France a 1-goal favorite on 6 points. They are very unlikely to be caught. 6-goal differential ahead of Australia. It'd take a lopsided loss for them, a lopsided win for Australia. Odds aren't certainly suggesting that with France a 1-goal favorite with all the juice right now. Potentially moving to 1.25 before this kicks off on Wednesday. Over under is 2.5, and it's really hard for me to want to play an under with France. Denmark, I did play that one there, and it felt like it was about to win. But Kylian Mbappe is just so intimidating, terrifying, all those sort of things. And Tunisia, they do have some ability, I think, but unfortunately, they're not as strong of a team, and really were expected to finish, I think, behind Australia even in this group. So there's a huge divide between France and Denmark. So it's very disappointing to see Denmark potentially not even going through if there were no matches left today, and the thing ended today. But I'm just not sure that I really want to get in the way of France, even with pretty much everything clinched. I think their backups are still far better than Tunisia. They have much less to play for, and motivation is a concern with them. But ultimately, I just don't think that's a place I want to get in the way of. Last but not least, we'll go to Group C, wrap up this podcast. But first, give it an ultimate best bet, my favorite one for this, Match Day 3, Part 1 edition. And we'll come back after that. But we'll start with Poland. I'll read off everything in the group. It's Poland, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, and Mexico. Poland on 4 points, Argentina on 3, Saudi Arabia on 3, and Mexico on 1. Not sure a lot of people had that coming, but that's what happens when the big favorite falls to the worst projected team in the group. Poland are a 1-goal underdog right now to Argentina. Over under is 2.5, very juiced to the under. And currently Poland with 4 points. A draw will get them through, and that's probably what they're playing for, because I don't really know what they have offensively. Robert Lewandowski has looked really poor in this tournament, including getting a penalty save, which really just didn't seem like a very good attempt from him, potentially feeling the pressure. I'm not sure exactly how to explain it, but Argentina, on the other hand, had that awful collapse against Saudi Arabia, and then could have tried it late, but a couple clearances off the line made it impossible. And they still need to perform here because there's a possibility that Saudi Arabia could beat Mexico or to draw Mexico, and then Argentina lost to Poland. They might not get through. I'm not so worried about that. I feel like Argentina will win this match, which unfortunately makes Poland +1 less interesting. If I'm already saying out loud, I think Argentina will win. But the Poland defense is not strong. And unfortunately, I just don't know that their offense has enough to really trouble a weaker Argentina back line. I think Argentina's weakness is their defense. But I don't know how much Poland, despite having Robert Lewandowski, can really challenge them. Lewandowski and Zielinski are awesome together, but there's really nothing behind them. And I feel like that's not enough on a World Cup stage. They potentially would have some success on corners because they have really tall. I mean, Poles, I think, are just generally very tall. But I don't know that Kamil Glik can even move besides using his head to clear the ball from inside his own box. Kivior looked a little bit concerning, and I don't think has been great in Serie A this year. And I just feel like I have some concerns with Poland in a lot of different directions. I do like that one goal of insurance. And I do think that this is going to be a tight match where you won't see a lot of goals. I think Poland are going to focus on defense. They're playing Messi, for God's sakes, but Messi's also a terrifying player to be against because he can take one touch really in a nothing game and put it in the corner, put Argentina up 1-0, and then they'll end up giving another wonder goal to cover the spread, and then potentially put the under in jeopardy as well. A 2-0 Argentina that would split here if you're playing Poland and under. That's the way I lean in both of these, I guess, choices. But I don't feel great about Poland at this moment. Last but not least on this podcast, we have Saudi Arabia and Mexico. Saudi Arabia currently a 3/4 goal underdog with all the juice on Mexico right now. Over-under is 2 3/4. And Mexico are, they haven't been scoring goals for a year or longer now. Really struggling in CONCACAF. Saudi Arabia are a really bad team, so I'm not sure that they are much different than CONCACAF. But if Mexico struggled there, then why do we think, with all the pressure on, sitting last in the group, will this change? The Mexican offense was non-existent against Argentina, and I think that was Tata's choice. I expect that will be completely different, and they'll be wide open in this matchup, which does not make me think the under looks great, though Saudi Arabia doesn't have a lot of attacking talent to really take advantage of that. The Saudis played a really high line against Argentina. It worked really well. Then it didn't work against Poland that well. I don't know if you could really blame the high line for their loss, but Saudi Arabia know that if they can get a point, they're in good shape to go through. Problem is they're 3 behind goal differential of Poland, and if they tied them in goal differential, they lost the head-to-head. So that's not great, which might mean that Saudi Arabia have to come out and play a little bit more. So potentially even over 2 3/4 looks interesting, but I mean, not that much to me, considering how much Mexico has struggled to score. I feel like Saudi Arabia is going to try to win this match, and they're going to play a high line. So nothing should really change here, which is nice. If you're backing an underdog, you want them to play the way they were expecting to enter into this tournament. They're probably just feeling fortunate to even have a chance to go through right now. Figured they'd be done at this point. I mean, I don't know if any professional athlete representing his country will ever admit that, but I think from where Mexico sits, they're going to have to, they have all the pressure on them. Finishing last would be really embarrassing. I think Tata would already lose his job if they don't get through this round to the knockout stage. But I think they haven't failed to get out of the knockouts in a very, very long time. But so I guess I lean to Saudi Arabia. I'm waiting for this to hit +1 to have a really more legitimate lean. And I'm kind of feeling both ways about totals because I have not liked overs in this tournament whatsoever. I feel like that's been the right place to be. But I got to say, I don't really trust Mexico to score. So Saudi and under, I mean, again, I feel like that's my leans in most of these matches, whatever underdog and under. And I feel like it's gone really well for me so far this tournament. But I want to make sure that I can try to cut out some of the losers that are coming through here lately, because I just feel like I've had a good tournament. I don't want to give too much away. I want to only really play things I like. So again, thanks for following me and honestly sticking with me on Twitter. I saw my follower count actually increasing despite being essentially banned for an entire weekend of the most important and biggest sporting event in the world. Really tough and it's been really hurtful. And I'm not a fan of Twitter at the moment and probably won't be for a long time. But thank you all for sticking with me, _G Warner on Twitter. Feel free if you want to interact on there. in my notifications, DMs, anything's open. Just come through, send something, email if it's on there, if you can find it. But if you're listening on Spotify, please give 5 stars and subscribe. Same sort of thing on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube as well. Love to have as many people as possible. And like I said, I can do more podcasts and have more reason to when I get more interaction. Also look below for the promo code if you want to sign up for Bet Online and get an extra bonus for depositing. So that brings the ultimate best bet portion of the show. It is now 1 a.m. here, and I'm staying up late, and it's it's the last thing I'm going to do before I go to sleep. Thanks for sticking with me as always. And I guess I'll summarize my interest for the next 2 days. Qatar, I am not interested in that match whatsoever. I really do like Senegal plus a quarter, and I think I like the under even better than that, 2 or 2.25 at this point. I also, going past that, don't really have a feeling that I want to do on Wales and England. But I do really like Iran getting half of a goal, and I like under 2.25 just as much. Furthermore, I'll go into Wednesday. I lean to Australia again, that +1, but I like under 2.5 better. Don't really have a feel for Tunisia and France. Poland and Argentina, I do like under, and I like Poland a little bit. Want to see where this line goes, and certainly am no interest in locking in now, as I expect a lot of money to come in on Lionel Messi. And last but not least, Saudi Arabia, I guess, are of interest to me if they hit +1. They're not there yet, and I have no real lean on the total. So that pretty much comes down to the Poland under, the Denmark under, or either the Senegal or United States under. And I'm going to go with the United States under. I feel like that is the place I want to be for this matchup, or this match day, or part 1 of match day 3. It's late. Give me a break. Thank you. But I just feel like Iran, they want to play defensively, and they're going to put 11 men behind the ball and make it really hard in the U.S. I also lean to Iran in this matchup as well, as I feel like there's a very good chance that they draw. I think goalless is very possible, and I think 1-1 is also a reasonable possibility, as long as a 1-0 victory either way. I feel like there's a lot of those range of outcomes that fit the under. And just the United States, I just don't trust them to score goals. Certainly there's a big concern, whoever's up 1-0, that they add on late to go and 2-0, because the other team has to really overextend. But I just don't know that necessarily will happen, because I think it's going to take a long time to get a goal. Maybe the U.S. get one at the end. That would certainly work for the under and work for my fanhood. But yeah, from where I sit, I just don't see goals in this one happening. I think there's going to be too much pressure on a young United States team, and at best, they're winning this match 1-0. Again, you can follow me on Twitter, @real_G Warner, and I will be back either tomorrow night or on Wednesday night for, I guess, to finish this episode off, match day 3, to go through part 2 through groups E, F, G, and H. And again, thanks everyone for sticking with me, and I will talk to you soon.